Welcome to another deep dive where we explore a fascinating story from a really remarkable source.
Yeah.
Today we're delving into a very personal memoir that truly pulls back the curtain on the glittering and, yeah, often brutal world of Hollywood. Our mission to extract potent nuggets of insight from a life lived fully, sometimes chaotically, and, well, always on our own terms.
And our source is Sybil Disobedience by Sybil Shepherd's. And like you said, this isn't just a typical celebrity memoir. It's a really candid look at a woman's journey through fame, relationships, self-discovery. As Sybil herself reflects, it's less a how to succeed and maybe more of a how not to book.
Yeah, and that how not to approach often led to some of her biggest breakthroughs, actually, as we'll see. So to set the scene, let's drop you right into a moment. October 30, 1999, Los Angeles, 6:17 p.m. Sybil Shepherd is stuck in just bumper-to-bumper traffic on the Hollywood freeway. She's desperate to make her cabaret act at the Cinegrill, the Hollywood Roosevelt Hotel.
It sounds like pure, unadulterated chaos. I mean, she gets rear-ended by a station wagon, then she just abandons her car, starts running down Hollywood Boulevard, dragging this rolling suitcase, full of costumes and sheet music, and she's wearing this kind of wild, impromptu outfit. A black leather cap, high tops, black jeans, and this bodywear top that she herself notes could either get her arrested or hired.
Okay, get this. A wino calls out, "Come on, baby, give me some of that." And without even missing a beat, Sybil shoots back, "Normally I would, but right now I don't have time." Can you imagine?
That's incredible. And just when you think, okay, maybe she'll make it, she gets to the Cinegrill. Her name isn't even on the marquee. She looks down, sees this wad of gum on her Hollywood Walk of Fame star, kicks it off, and now she's hobbling into the lobby with, purple goo stuck to her shoe.
Oh, the glamour.
Yeah.
And the pandemonium just continues inside. Right.
Yeah.
So relief washes over her when she spots a placard confirming her performance finally. Then she somehow crams herself, sticky shoe, suitcase and all, into a packed elevator. The woman squeals, "Are you who I think you are?" And Sybil, probably gasping for breath, replies, "I certainly hope so." She rushes into her dressing room, finds her makeup's leaked all over her bag, her hairdresser's stuck in traffic, and her 12-year-old son, Zachariah, bursts in, having completely forgotten it's the biggest party of the year.
Wow. And then the stage manager gives her the 1 hour warning, just piles on. And to top it all off, her older daughter calls from the car, also stuck in traffic, taking their pug, Petunia, to the vet. It's just everything at once.
Exactly. And it's in this absolute whirlwind of domestic and professional mayhem. Her hairdresser finally arrives. Some unknown woman is gushing about Sybil's book, needing advice for her own collapsing marriage, crazy kids, premenopausal state. That Sybil has this internal thought that just perfectly encapsulates her journey. She thinks, but clearly I'm writing more of a how not to book. This isn't just a frantic dash. It's our first potent nugget, right? Sybil's life is this masterclass in navigating chaos and finding your footing within it, often leading to unexpected self-discovery. So, okay, how did this whole how not to journey even begin? Let's unpack her accidental stardom. It surprisingly started with beauty pageants.
Yeah, it's pretty striking how, despite her later, anti-establishment views, she failed gym, cheated in Latin, smoked Prince Edward cigars. Sybil was relentlessly pushed into these pageants by her cousin. She even entered Miss Teenage Memphis.
And the details of these early contests are kind of telling, aren't they? The written test, held in weird places like a Sears Garden Center, and her talent routine, singing Michael Row the Boat Ashore while playing the bass ukulele. It really highlights the surprisingly informal, almost amateurish beginnings of her professional path.
She won Miss Teenage Memphis, went on to the Miss Teenage America pageant in Dallas, where she was named Miss Congeniality. But she says this public success actually fueled her lifelong anxiety about falling short of perfection. It also says a lot about the societal expectations back home. Being named Memphis's Cotton Carnival Princess in '68 was apparently a commission that could not be refused for someone of her family standing.
Right. From there, she transitioned into modeling. There was even some family history there. Her grandfather was in a Shapley's hardware ad as a toddler. Her first paying job, though, was for Coppertone, shot in a studio with, get this, a dump truck of white sand. Yet she initially really disdained modeling, preferred studying art history at Louisiana State.
But then came Stuart Cowley. Apparently notorious for being litigation-prone, they called him Suing Stu. And he was incredibly persistent. Sybil herself showed up to their second meeting in, total defiant disregard for her appearance. Cut-off jeans, mahogany tan, unwashed hair.
But Cowley had a trump card, didn't he? The compelling argument that swayed her, a promise of a $25,000 guaranteed modeling contract. and the clincher.
Okay.
And you're a hell of a lot closer to Italy and New York than in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. That seemed to seal the deal.
It did, but the realities of modeling were, well, tough and pretty formulaic. She talks about feeling this deep loneliness and being intimidated by Northerners who apparently took her Memphis accent as mild retardation, which is just awful. This bit offers a crucial insight, I think, into the early, kind of insidious ways Hollywood commodified and distorted female beauty. Sybil's experience really highlights the paradox, right? Being celebrated for this idealized image while battling relentless scrutiny and this pervasive lack of control. Her Brett Girl portrait, for instance, she describes as an idealized vision, all misty and dew-eyed like a Stepford wife. Just a stark contrast to her own struggles.
And there was a much darker side, too. Stuart Cowley actually set her up with some B-list mogul who, under the guise of a scene rehearsal, attempted a sexual assault. Her immediate reaction was powerful. Don't ever leave me alone with one of those creeps again. She also did that screen test for Roger Vadim for a film called Peril, where she danced, with no sound MOS, right? Mid-out sound. Danced to I Can't Get No Satisfaction. This whole experience just reinforced her need for a chaperone and ultimately led her to decline a gruesome death scene in Pretty Maids All in a Row. Wow. That early period really shows her inherent resilience, but also the intense pressure she faced early on. But that was just the beginning of her pushing back. Her next truly defining role, that was The Last Picture Show.
Right. She had initially ignored scripts until her friend Jim Rogers found The Last Picture Show. And a key insight here is her reluctance to play J.C. Farrow. She saw her as this self-absorbed ice princess. Plus, she had a really strong aversion to the script's 2 nude scenes. She viewed nudity itself as an inherently moral concept, but actually dropping my skivvies, as she put it, was something else entirely.
Her first meeting with the director, Peter Bogdanovich, sounds memorable too. She intentionally tried to convey lack of interest, jeans, Dr. Scholl's wooden sandals carrying Dostoevsky's War and Peace. Heavy stuff. Yet she describes an immediate attraction that was so strong she even fumbled Tolstoy's name. And Peter later told her he imagined J.C. could do to any man what he'd watched Sybil doing with a rose, just slowly plucking its petals one by one. Kind of intense.
Casting was definitely challenging. Ben Johnson, for example, initially refused the part of Sam the Lion over the dialogue. He was only convinced after John Ford himself called him. Imagine getting that call. Peter, though, was absolutely convinced about casting Sybil after seeing her on a Glamour cover. Producer Bert Schneider had his doubts, apparently even dug up her old Vadim screen test to try and dissuade Peter. But ultimately, Schneider greenlit it with a pretty clear mandate. Make sure there's a lot of nudity. Which created this huge personal conflict for her. Her boyfriend at the time, John Bruno, declared, "You do a nude scene and I will never marry you." Which really contrasted with her own view of marriage as indentured servitude and, the whole sexual libertinism vibe of the late 60s, mate-swapping, orgies, and key parties. But interestingly, it was actually John's mother, Frances Bruno, who encouraged her. She said, if you want to do this movie, you gotta do this movie. So the filming itself took place in Archer City, Texas, called Anarene in the film, and the crew was basically persona non grata because the locals resented the portrayal in the book. Sybil lived in this cheerless room, worked with an accent coach. Peter shared a room with his wife, Polly, who had just given birth to their second daughter. And this difficult timing also coincided with Peter's father's death, which added this unexpected, profound layer of raw emotion to the funeral scene he had to shoot for the film.
And it was during this intense period that her intellectual awakening happened, right?
Yeah.
She apparently devoured Kate Millett's Sexual Politics, Germaine Greer's The Female Eunuch, Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique, leading her to declare herself born again as a radical feminist right there on set.
Yeah. And Peter's direction style was very specific. He'd ask for double takes, overlapping dialogue, particular pieces of business like slurping a milkshake. He decided to shoot in black and white to emphasize dramatic content and performance, believing color could be distracting. He also seemed to have this knack for presiding over accidents, like using a sun doing gymnastics in and out of clouds to create this moody chiaroscuro effect.
But it also came with challenges, like meddling producers. Stephen Friedman, who owned the movie rights, showed up on set and started giving her notes on her performance. Peter apparently exploded, ran to a phone and screamed, "If that cocksucker isn't at a Texas by tonight, I'm going to borrow a hunting knife from one of these good old boys and kill him."
Friedman was gone the next morning.
Wow. There was also that joke on set. If you want to get fired from this picture, talk to Sybil Shepherd.
And then the personal complexities really started to emerge. The start of her affair with Peter, marked by him serenading her by the Red River. Sybil reflects pretty honestly on the narcissism inherent in a love triangle, acknowledging her own part in causing pain. Polly's discovery sounds brutal. She knew when she saw a box of pralines in their room that weren't for her, and one night, seeing them together, she literally crawled out of a restaurant on her knees. Just devastating.
Oh, man. And her anxiety about the nudity was still very real throughout this. She was self-conscious about her body, even though Peter told her, "Don't you dare lose weight." When they searched for a body double, she was put in the bizarre position of describing her own breast, saying, "eggs over easy." How humiliating. She demanded a signed affidavit promising no nude stills would be released, which led to Peter's threat. "If you ever mention this again, I will never give you another piece of direction." So for one scene, she famously wore 2 pairs of underpants, finding her anxiety was impeccable motivation.
After the nude scenes and the affair began, she had this fascinating personal revelation. She actually believed God would strike her dead for what she'd done, but she woke up alive the next day and realized, okay, I was going to live. She rationalized the affair as, well, only doing what men have been doing for eons. And John Bruno, her jilted boyfriend, sent her this pithy present, a heart-shaped dog tag saying, "My name is Seasbell, I belong to no one," which saddened her then, but she said later it became an estimable motto.
After filming Wrapped, Peter called her to live with him in L.A. Just told her, on the next plane. Her mother's reaction was incredibly harsh. "If you're going to be with a married man, you might as well be a whore." Ouch. Though she still attended the premiere. The film itself received massive critical acclaim, called a masterpiece. The most impressive work by a young American director since Citizen Kane. High praise. She felt she had become an actress under the tutelage of a great teacher. But her candid self-assessment, borrowing from Orson Welles apparently, was, "I started at the top and worked my way down." She says that, but from everything we've heard, her resilience is just undeniable.
It's a really powerful statement from her, isn't it? Reflects the intense pressure and, yeah, often brutal self-criticism in Hollywood. And while she felt she was maybe working her way down, the narrative clearly shows her continually redefining success on her own terms, which you could argue is its own kind of upward trajectory. Her life with Peter was marked by their mutual rejection of marriage vows, yet she does express regret about not having had a child together.
She also had to navigate Peter's "don't ask me what you don't want to know" rule, right? Especially when she had that affair with Elvis Presley. The dramatic phone call where Peter screamed, "You're a goddamn liar," and threatened to wash her mouth out with ivory soap only made her hear that he wanted me back. That's quite an interpretation.
Her early talk show circuit appearances were apparently a struggle. Elaine May initially assessed her as chattering mindlessly when considering her for the Heartbreak Kid. Yet Neil Simon was convinced. He told her, "I always knew you'd be perfect." There's also a memorable, slightly awkward detail from filming. Charles Grodin's toupee led to an awkward moment during a scene where she was supposed to play with his hair.
And the issue of nudity came up again. But for Sybil, she framed it as an issue of power, not morality. She successfully fought to use a body double for the Heartbreak Kid, apparently influenced by Alfred Hitchcock's cleverness in how he shot Psycho.
Peter's father's death also coincided with the filming of Paper Moon, which apparently led to singular creative hostility with Polly on set. Understandable, perhaps. And Peter had these really unique relationships with film legends. Alfred Hitchcock famously got Peter drunk and told him some gruesome story in an elevator.
Yeah, and perhaps one of the most unexpected chapters, Orson Welles living in their house for 2 years. He had these intriguing "God was a man" comments, loved her leftovers, and fudgesicles, famously bellowed, "Who ate the last fudgesicle?" I mean, finding his custom-made 3-foot-wide silk boxer shorts, that's quite a mental image.
Indeed. It just adds to the legendary mystique of Welles, doesn't it? And Sybil's unique position in that whole orbit. Orson gave her some pretty candid advice for Daisy Miller, telling her, "Henry James wrote this for you," but then adding, "You act wonderfully on camera just like Daisy, but you overact in real life." Ouch.
Daisy Miller ended up being a box office bomb. Critics often reviewed her relationship with Peter instead of the film itself. That must have stung. This led to a bit of a career slump, and her album, Mad About the Boy, had to be renamed Sybil Gets Better after the record label went bankrupt. Bad luck seemed to follow for a bit.
Her romantic life post-Peter sounds, well, complex. She lived in the Love Pavilion apartment, which was a shrine to Buster Keaton, and she embraced this philosophy of having multiple lovers, finding that shuttling between 2 lovers did not preclude my taking a third or fourth or fifth. She even tells this provocative story about the director where she admits she embroidered the truth about lying in an empty bathtub while on the phone. And she describes the Sybil sandwich as a positive sexual experience that made her feel adored, emancipated. It really seems like she was experimenting, searching for connection and maybe self-acceptance through these varied relationships.
So after those lows, how did she manage that remarkable comeback with Moonlighting? That felt like such a complete shift for her.
It really was a major turning point. Her low point after Peter led her to accept a guest spot on Fantasy Island, apparently following advice to leave her big agency. Then came The Yellow Rose, where she was cast despite Priscilla Presley auditioning for the same part, and she accepted what she called a bargain basement salary.
Then came the audition for Moonlighting, the dramatic audition with Bruce Willis. He shows up in an army fatigue jacket, several earrings, and a compensatory 3-day beard. It's quite a look. He made these smart-ass male bonding comments to the producers, avoided eye contact with her, but she noted this definite chemistry that made the temperature in the room jump about 20 degrees. Her immediate reaction, he's the one.
But ABC was resistant to Bruce Willis. They apparently deemed him not leading man material. Can you believe it? Sybil actually had to do a screen test with him to convince them. And it was during this test that Bruce delivered the line, "I can't concentrate, you're too beautiful," which, according to the story, sealed the deal for the executives.
Well,
Classic. The show itself was totally groundbreaking, wasn't it? This Hawksian comedy with snappy, overlapping dialogue. She suggested they screen His Girl Friday and Bringing Up Baby to study the masters of that style. Her character, Maddie Hayes, was conceived as the ultimate bitch goddess who gets her comeuppance, while David Addison was the emotional adolescent. That dynamic was key.
Oh, absolutely. But the production schedule sounds grueling. Scripts close to 100 pages, always behind schedule. They used toe shots, literally taping scripts to the dashboard for driving scenes, and even breaking the fourth wall, speaking directly to the camera, was apparently born out of necessity just to fill time sometimes. Plus, the show was incredibly expensive, like $1.5 million per episode back then. And the physical demands, the pressure on her appearance. That sounds intense, too. 2 to 3 hours in hair and makeup daily compared to Bruce's 15 minutes. Wow. They even used a special camera filter just for her, to make her look prettier when panning from Bruce. Angela Lansbury gave her advice on TV work rules, but Glenn Caron, the showrunner, just dismissed it. Sort of highlights the dismissive attitude towards experienced female voices, maybe.
Seems like it. And Orson Welles did that astonishing favor of introducing an episode, kind of echoing his 1938 War of the Worlds prank. Poignantly, he died just 2 weeks later, and the episode had to be dedicated to him. The show gained huge critical acclaim, calling her TV's sexiest Spitfire. But despite its success, it kept getting snubbed for Emmys in the comedy category until it was finally reclassified as a drama.
But the on-set tensions with Bruce Willis were legendary, right? He complained constantly. She even put up a punching bag on set. And the producers reacted to her pregnancy as a thoughtless inconvenience. Glenn Caron even blamed her pregnancy for destroying Moonlighting, which is just harsh. Her character, Maddie, was forced into this absurd marriage storyline. You can imagine how a self-proclaimed radical feminist felt about that.
Yeah, the creative conflicts and power struggles with Glenn Caron were frequent, especially around editing choices that she felt minimized her character's humanity or reactions. She famously threw a director's chair, though she clarifies the tabloids wrongly reported she threw it at Glenn. Still, pretty dramatic. And the signature door slamming that became a running gag. It apparently required studio carpenters to rebuild the sets every single season because they slammed them so hard.
And she refused to play a scene with a hysterical tirade because she felt it lacked motivation, which led to bullying from Glenn and Jay Daniel, another producer. She even wrote a formal letter to Glenn refusing the abuse. Then there was that contentious ABC guidelines memo limiting set times, even bathroom breaks. Her lawyer strongly pushed back on that one.
Ultimately, Glenn Caron left the show. He apparently stated it was him or me, which explicitly confirmed that boys' club dynamic that often excluded her. So despite its massive success, the show eventually ended, leaving Sybil feeling, in her words, terrified about her future prospects.
So after Moonlighting, her journey continued to redefine success, both professionally and personally. What did she discover about herself during this next phase?
While her post-Moonlighting struggles were pretty real at first, she took on what she calls projects of no particular consequence, including The Return, a movie about aliens inhabiting cows, which she dubbed not quite the worst movie ever made, but close. She also developed an extreme aversion to being tied up after a frightening gas explosion incident on that set.
But then her passion reignited. She returned to theater vanities, the 7-year itch. And she says she truly fell in love with acting there, discovering that in theater, the writer and the actor have more control. Makes sense. She tells a memorable anecdote about Joey Bishop being abusive on stage and how she learned to confront him by just loudly asking, mid-performance, "Excuse me, what did you say?" Took guts.
Then came the personal body blow of her husband David's infidelity. She describes it vividly, like watching an egg fall and shatter in slow motion. And this was compounded by significant financial demands during their divorce. A really tough time.
But she eventually made another return to television with The Sybil Show. This was after Jay Daniel, the producer for Moonlighting, apparently admitted she'd been a victim of what amounted to a sexist boys' club. Quite an admission. She insisted that Chuck Lorre make her character, Sybil Sheridan, smart. And she strongly focused on depicting genuine female friendships, especially with Marianne Thorpe, played brilliantly by Christine Baranski.
Yeah, casting Christine Baranski was interesting. Sybil says she initially evinced a chilly attitude, but her talent was just undeniable. And Sybil herself faced constant battles over wardrobe, creative input, including one famous instance where she objected to, and flat out refused to say, a demeaning joke about female anatomy. Good for her.
The Sybil Show environment sounded high pressure, too. She refused to do a scene involving blackface because she was on the advisory board of the National Civil Rights Museum. Instead, she suggested using pantyhose over their heads, which she noted was hilarious, with the feet dangling like tassels. Creative solution.
But the really striking thing here is the insidious nature of the politics behind the scenes. She eventually realized that Polly Platt, Peter Bogdanovich's ex-wife, was working at Carsey Werner, the production company, and she believed Polly was actively harming her career. She also discovered that Jay Daniel was blaming her for the show's high costs. The final straw was the network's unilateral decision to remove her from having the final cut on episodes, explicitly stating it was to protect the rights and interests of Carsey Werner and those of Bob Meyer and Christine Baranski.
Ugh.
And immediately after the show's cancellation, she faced this dramatic health crisis, emergency abdominal surgery for twisted intestines. She felt physically as though she had been kicked in the gut by a horse and symbolically realized, I knew the name of that horse. Wow, what a powerful metaphor for the battle she'd been fighting. Yeah, and even in the face of the show's end, her defiance shone through. She made sure the editor gave her good coverage shots to cut around Christine Baranski's apparent scowling during the final musical number. And she got the editor to give her a personal copy of that edited scene for free, even though the studio demanded $12,000 for it. The haunting image she describes of her name being spray painted over on the studio wall, but the intense, bright blue paint still visible underneath as a ghostly presence that really sticks with you.
The irony is just stark, isn't it? Sybil was CBS's highest-rated sitcom for women, #2 for young adults, yet it gets canceled. Roseanne Barr called her to commiserate, saying, "Everybody's treating me like a monster, but I didn't do anything monstrous." Then Roseanne admitted, "Well, I did. I did everything they said I did, and I don't regret any of it. I just wish I'd done more." Quite a contrast.
She concludes her memoir reflecting on her final significant relationship with someone she calls Howard Rourke. She believed he was solid, but he ultimately left her, and then later sold tabloid stories and falsely claimed she owed him money. Just awful betrayal. This led to a really profound realization for Sybil. She felt she was desperately trying to prove my lifelong theory that justified being sexual. If someone makes me feel this good, it must be love. Her later understanding became that sex was scariest when I was vulnerable. And reflecting on her mother's difficult relationship with her father, Sybil's own conclusion became, poignantly, all I know is how not to do it. Sybil Shepherd's journey, really, from that accidental entry into entertainment to battling tooth and nail for creative control and personal autonomy in such a challenging industry, it truly is a deep dive. A deep dive into the complexities of fame, relationships, self-discovery. Her story is one of incredible resilience, I think, and a real testament to finding wisdom in the most unexpected, even difficult places.
Yeah, absolutely. And it leaves us with a final provocative thought for you, our listener. Sybil Shepherd, through her immense candor, really reveals how often success in public life comes hand in hand with these intense private battles, and how our personal narratives are constantly being written and rewritten, not just by ourselves, but maybe even more powerfully by others, by external forces. So how much of our own story do we truly control, especially when those external forces are so intent on shaping it for us? And what unexpected places can self-knowledge and resilience take us, even when we feel like we're on what initially seems like a how-not-to journey? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We encourage you to reflect on what stood out to you from this really fascinating exploration.